Planet Reddit. Today's story is...
My husband ruined our honeymoon by helping his ex. I came home to find out that he had been living with her for 7 days. I had only been married a month, and this week we were finally going to have our long-awaited honeymoon. However, everything fell apart while I was sitting at the airport. I received a text message from my husband informing me that he would not be able to make it because his ex-wife had contacted him about an emergency she needed him to attend to. To give you a better understanding of the situation, my husband is very dedicated to his work. So much so that he scheduled a meeting with an important client for the morning of our departure. For this reason, he asked me to go to the airport in advance while he would arrive directly from his office. This situation had already made me quite upset, as I honestly believe he could have rescheduled that meeting for another time. When I received his message about the emergency with his ex, I simply couldn't contain my frustration. At that moment, I made an impulsive decision. I bought a ticket to another destination to visit my sister and decided to completely ignore all his messages and apologies. It wasn't until yesterday that I finally replied to him, but only to send him some photos of me having fun in a nightclub, which has caused quite a stir in our families. It's been 3 days since we missed our original flight, and during all this time he has not stopped apologizing, especially after discovering that, instead of returning home when he didn't arrive, I decided to take another flight to be with my sister. Yesterday, while I was especially upset about the whole situation, my sister suggested we go to a club to cheer me up. We ended up dancing and drinking, and in the middle of it all I decided to take several photos to send to him. My intention was to make him feel bad, but he decided to share this with the whole family, and now everyone is criticizing me for being insensitive and ignoring his emergency. Let me explain the supposed emergency. Her ex called him because she had tripped and hurt her ankle. While it is true that her parents live in another state, she has friends who could have helped her. However, she specifically decided to call my husband, her ex-husband, who ended up being the one who took her to the emergency room. After landing at my new destination, I received several messages from him explaining the whole situation in detail. But this only increased my anger, because I feel that his ex could have called literally anyone else in the world, but specifically chose to call him. And he, for his part, chose to abandon our honeymoon for this. He didn't even have the consideration to call me on the phone. He just sent me a message saying that I would miss the flight, without initially explaining what the emergency was. He didn't consider it necessary to give me an explanation until after he had resolved the situation, and that's what bothers me the most. From my perspective, this was not a situation that he had any obligation to resolve. He could have easily contacted one of their mutual friends and asked them to help. At least that is what I would have done in his place, especially since he knows that I do not have a good relationship with his ex. However, everyone else insists that I am being overly sensitive and that my jealousy is making me look insecure and pathetic. I don't share that opinion. I firmly believe that his ex should have sought help from someone else, and that my husband shouldn't have come to her aid, especially considering that this meant canceling our honeymoon. However, seeing the negative reaction of both families, I begin to wonder if perhaps I went a little overboard in my behavior with him. So, am I the bad guy for being so angry with my husband for canceling our honeymoon to attend to a medical emergency of his ex? Update 1. I didn't feel ready to talk to my in-laws because of the current tension, but I did explain everything to my family. The truth is that my frustration with my husband goes back a long way. Since we got engaged, I feel like he's been taking me for granted. He's been focusing so much on his work that he even suggested postponing our wedding until he got his promotion, although at the time I flatly refused. We had quite a few arguments over little things before we got married. I tried to stay calm, thinking it was just a temporary phase and that he would eventually calm down with work, but clearly I was wrong. And then there's this whole thing with his ex. I know that in my original post I probably seemed insecure, and I understand why someone who doesn't know the whole story might think I'm the villain here. But I have my reasons. My husband and his ex have a rather complex history. They met at university, were together for 3 years and married at 23. They remained married for another 3 years before divorcing due to incompatibility. 2 years later he met me. He was always very honest about his relationship with her, explaining to me that she had been an important part of his life and that they were still friends because the divorce had been amicable. Before I met her personally, I didn't feel insecure at all. But when I saw how she behaved around him, I felt very uncomfortable. To give some context, they are part of a group of friends from university and get together every 2 months or so. After almost a year together, my husband took me to meet his friends, knowing that his ex would be there as always. I prepared myself mentally for the encounter and at first everything went well. She was kind and pleasant to me, but as the night went on, things became strange. It's hard to explain, but it became clear that she hadn't gotten over the relationship. Her behavior made it clear. She tried to monopolize my husband's attention all night. She pouted if he didn't pay enough attention to her, and although she wasn't directly rude to me, she acted as if I didn't exist. The more she drank, the less she contained herself. By the end of the night, I was feeling very uncomfortable and I made this clear to my husband. At first he pretended not to understand, but when he saw how much it bothered me, he admitted that he had noticed her strange behavior. He assured me that it was the first time she had acted like that since the divorce, that in her previous meetings with friends she had behaved normally, but that perhaps knowing that I would be present, she felt insecure and acted strangely, suggesting that maybe she had not completely overcome it. I could understand that after so much time together, it would be difficult for her to see him with someone else, but I had complete faith in my husband. I knew that asking him to stop seeing her would cause a lot of problems. He doesn't have many friends at work because he's very competitive, and as he moved around a lot as a child, he doesn't have any childhood friends either. This group at university is pretty much all he has. Also, I don't think anyone other than the two of us noticed his ex's strange behavior that night. If I had asked him to stop seeing her, he would have had to stop meeting up with his friends, which would have completely isolated him. I couldn't expect all his friends to adapt to my feelings and stop seeing someone they had been friends with for so many years, especially when they probably didn't even know what was going on. That's why I didn't make a drama out of it. Because I trusted my husband completely, I knew that she could act as insecure as she wanted, it wouldn't make any difference to him. Even that night, when I was there for the first time, he ignored her and made sure to make me feel like his priority. He continued to meet up with his friends and I knew that his ex was there, but I didn't go again because I didn't like her. At our wedding, we invited her because it would have been strange to exclude her from the circle of friends, especially as they had a good relationship. Besides, I didn't want her to think I felt insecure about her. Surprisingly, she behaved differently that day. She was kind to me and kept her distance, which was a positive thing. That was my last interaction with her until this incident. Now, as you can imagine, all her friends knew that we were going on our honeymoon that particular day, and I think it's a big coincidence that she got hurt on that very day. I find it even stranger that, having so many friends in common, she specifically called him when they are not even that close anymore, neither emotionally nor geographically. I know that one of her friends literally lives a few blocks away from her, but she still chose to call my husband. And although his office is quite far from his home, he went instead of asking his friends to help her. This, added to his obsessive work behavior in the last few months, was too much for me. We had already been arguing a lot about his work and his availability, and he knew that I didn't like his ex. It was the last straw. But what bothered me the most was that he didn't even call me to explain the situation. He just sent me a text message and left it at that, as if I simply had to accept it and deal with it. Yes, I took a flight to see my sister out of anger because I didn't want to be alone at that moment. I don't think I did anything wrong, especially when he had already decided not to go on the honeymoon. Besides, if he really wanted to make it up to me and apologize sincerely, he could have flown to where I am to do it in person. He definitely knows where I am. I've been posting stories with my sister. If he wanted to show me how sorry he was, he could have come to apologize and I probably would have forgiven him because he knows I'm weak when it comes to grand romantic gestures. When I sent him the photos of me having fun at the bar, drinking and dancing, my intention was to annoy him. I didn't think it would involve our families because I didn't do it, and I thought we were above that sort of thing. After all, he hurt me deeply by canceling our honeymoon because of his ex, but I didn't go and complain to his parents, so I don't understand why he felt the need to do it. I was already angry enough with him, and now I feel even worse. My sister has been my only support in all this. She has constantly defended me to our parents, and this morning they finally acknowledged that maybe I was right. I don't blame them for initially getting upset with me because they didn't know everything that had been going on between us. They had no idea of the problems we had because of his workaholism, nor of the awkward situation with his ex. But now I don't know what to do because since I sent him those photos, he has stopped trying to contact me. His parents keep sending me messages saying that I need to talk to him and apologize for being so mean, but he himself hasn't said anything. I plan to go home in a couple of days to talk to him in person because I don't think calls and messages are helpful at this point. For now, I'm still upset about all of this, but I appreciate everyone who commented on my post because I really needed to vent even though my sister is always there for me. I felt like telling this to strangers would help me get a clearer perspective, and it definitely worked. Update 2. I bought tickets to go home today. It's been 2 days since my last update and my in-laws are still messaging me, but my husband is still not saying anything. I guess he's really upset about the photos I sent him even though I wasn't even with men as many assumed. There were mainly women in the background. I understand why he is upset and I would probably feel the same in his place, but I don't think he understands why I am upset. If he did, he would have made more of an effort to contact me, but he has only made calls and sent messages. I don't think that is enough, considering the seriousness of the situation. If it had been any other trip, I probably wouldn't be so upset, but this was our honeymoon. It frustrates me that he doesn't seem to understand, apologizing as if it were normal. I even told some friends and they told me that my reaction was completely normal, especially since I no longer trusted his ex and he knew that it was important to me that he prioritize me. Even my parents have apologized now that they know the whole situation, but they have told me that if I want this marriage to work, I will have to take the first step and talk to him when he gets back, to break the ice. The problem is that I'm not sure I want to do it because I don't think I'm to blame. Yes, sending those photos was mean, but he went and complained to our parents as if they could punish me like a teenager. That was mean too, so we could call it a draw. I understand that my parents are advising me out of concern because they want my marriage to work. And so do I, because despite everything, I think I still love him. I'm sure if I talk to him, I'll know that he loves me too. But love is not enough. I need to know that he respects my opinions too. Right now I don't feel that way because he has been treating the situation so lightly that he doesn't even seem to take my anger seriously. And that's a problem because, as I mentioned before, I never liked his ex. The only reason I never asked him to stop seeing her was because I knew it would be too much to ask of him, as he would have to cut ties with his only friends. I am generally trusting, but I feel that even my trust has limits and this is crossing them. It also bothers me that he hasn't sent me any messages after the photos, or made any effort to contact or talk to me. My sister thinks I should stay with her until he comes to apologize, or until he decides to move on. And I can't take this anymore. I'm tempted by his offer because it would really teach him a lesson, but I don't want to be so petty either. After all, we've been together a long time. We're married, and although we've had problems, we've always overcome them. Although I don't feel very optimistic, I think if I talk to him, I can at least give it a chance to work. I don't want to give up without trying, but my dilemma is that maybe he is ready to do it because he is not trying anything. I don't even know what to feel anymore. I know I'm rambling, but I need to talk about this. I don't want to talk to friends or family because they will have their opinions and advice, and right now I just want to vent without hearing any of that. In short, I'm really upset because after the photos, he just stopped trying. And now, just because I did something out of anger, suddenly it's my responsibility to fix our relationship. I don't know how to feel about it, but if I really want this marriage to work, I know I'll have to give in and do it. So I'm going to go home and hope we can work it out. If not, then I don't know what to expect because the alternative is so bad I don't even want to say it out loud. Update 3. I flew back home early this morning and was surprised to find the house locked. I knew my husband wasn't at work because it was 8:21 in the morning and we didn't usually leave until 9. It was very strange. When I went inside, I was even more surprised to see that the house looked like it hadn't been cleaned in days. I immediately tried to call him, but he didn't answer. Finally, around 9 o'clock, he picked up, and when I told him I was back and asked him where he was, he asked me to stay at home while he came back. I didn't understand what was going on, but I stayed even though I had a bad feeling, because he wasn't at home. Of course, my first thought was that he must be staying with his ex. I already knew that if that was true, I would leave. There was no way I could stay with him knowing that he had spent the last few days with his ex, knowing how much I dislike her. But like a fool, I wanted to give him the opportunity to explain himself, thinking that maybe there would be a more innocent and reasonable explanation. A few minutes later he came home and I asked him point blank where he had been. Just as I feared, he confessed that he had been staying with his ex since the day of the flight. He had been staying with her for almost a week and he didn't even think it was important to mention it to me. Or more likely, he hid it on purpose because he knew it would make me even more furious. But whatever the reason, the fact is that he didn't tell me. I immediately lost control when she admitted it. I started yelling at her because I was already very upset and I knew this would happen. She tried to defend herself, but when I asked her if she had been going to work, she told me that she had been working from home. That was the last straw because when I had asked him to work from home for a few days or take time off to prepare for our wedding together, he had refused, saying that this promotion was too important to sacrifice his work. He belittled working from home and didn't want to risk anything. But now, just because he wanted to take care of his ex, he was willing to work from home without any problems. He tried to explain to me that her parents are old and couldn't come to look after her because they need care themselves. That all her friends were busy and he was the only one left. According to him, given the nature of their relationship, it would have been very rude to refuse. And as she was injured, it was very difficult for her to do things for herself, so he decided to stay with her. He assured me that he had slept on the sofa and that it had all been completely platonic, but that didn't matter to me at all. He could have slept in the basement and I wouldn't have cared. The point was that he had hidden something so important from me. And like an idiot, I had been feeling guilty about the photos I sent him. And all this time he had been staying at his ex's house. In comparison, what I did was nothing. And on top of that he had already sent those photos to our parents to make a fuss. So I had already faced the consequences of my actions, although they were not half as serious as his. I told him it was time for him to face the consequences of his actions too. As I hadn't unpacked yet, I simply grabbed my bags and set off. He insisted that he was just being a good friend to his ex, and that it would have been very cruel to refuse when she asked to stay. He kept trying to justify himself as if it were something perfectly normal. But I didn't want to listen to him anymore. I left, got in my car and drove to my parents' house. When I arrived, I explained the whole situation to them. They told me that if I wanted to file for divorce, they would help me contact a lawyer. I didn't hesitate for a second to accept. So now my parents are looking for a lawyer while I try to process everything that is happening. I shut it down immediately after I got home, even though he had sent me many messages saying he was sorry that I felt bad, but that he just wanted to help his friend. The fact that even when apologizing he was still defending his position made me even more angry. At this point, I don't regret anything I've done because I feel that, if anything, I was much less vindictive than I could have been. If I had known he was staying with his ex, I probably would have done everything I could to make him feel worse. Anyway, what's done is done. I'm just going to talk to a lawyer and get it over with. He can stay with his ex permanently now. I don't care anymore. Update 4. It's been a couple of weeks since my last update and I have now filed for divorce. He replied that he is not contesting it and we will be able to finalize everything soon because he has agreed to my terms. He sent me an email a few days ago saying that he is very sorry for how things turned out but that he feels I have become very insecure and jealous. He thinks this is the best decision in the long term because he doesn't think he can make the relationship work with me if this is the kind of person I am. It made my blood boil to read that email because even now he still thinks what he did was completely reasonable. Even his parents think the same. That's why they called my parents, to lecture them about my behavior, but my parents told them exactly where they could stick their lecture. I have decided to move in with my sister and in a few weeks I will also be changing jobs, as she managed to get me a position in her company. It's a big change, but honestly I need it. My friends and parents also think I need a change of environment, especially as I really love this man, but he turned out to be a total disappointment. And the truth is that I'm quite excited about my new life, especially because I'm going to be closer to my sister. I have hope for the future.